The headline reads, "Gay blessings will remain under Pope Leo," Vatican doctrine chief says. There's way more to this story, and that's why we're unpacking it for you. Welcome to the Father Leo Show, where I'm dishing out faith, culture, and commentary. And in this episode, we're going to discuss Pope Leo's position on either continuing or stopping Pope Francis's exhortation for blessing gay people who might be in a gay marriage. I know it's challenging, but there's a lot that we're going to have to kind of unpack because the headlines can be somewhat misleading. So we're going to jump right into it. But before we do, please make sure you like, subscribe, share, and comment. It helps us to overcome the algorithms that kind of suppress good Catholic, balanced, pastoral perspective. And we do know that the majority of the people who watch are not actually subscribers. The majority of our subscribers watch, but it would be wonderful if those who watch just simply hit the subscribe button. And if you are a regular watcher and you enjoy our content, please make sure that you visit patreon.com/The Father Leo Show, where we offer you not only great perks and extra content, we also develop a community and support the work that we do so that we can continue to feed people body, mind, and spirit. So let's just jump right into it now with Pope Leo's continuation or cancellation of Pope Francis's approach on gay marriage individual blessings. The reason why we're talking about this is not because of anything Pope Leo said, but because of what the head of the dicastery said. So this comes from the National Catholic Register online. The story goes, the headline reads, "Gay blessings will remain under Pope Leo," Vatican doctrine chief says. There's way more to this story, and that's why we're unpacking it for you, so that you don't offhand say, Pope Leo is just going to continue the LGBTQIA plus agenda of Pope Francis, because that would be many mistakes in that one kind of assessment. Nor should we approach this and say, Pope Leo is going to reverse everything that Pope Francis said prior about gay people and blessing of marriages, because those would be false premises as well. So let's just read the story. I'm going to read it for you and kind of make some comments on it. The Catholic Church's approval of blessing of couples in same-sex relationships, quote unquote, will remain under Pope Leo XIV, according to the head of the Vatican's doctrine office told an Italian reporter in a brief interview. So automatically, brief interview. Ahead of the congregation, whose name is Cardinal Victor Manuel Fernández, made the statement in response to a question from a journalist for the Rome-based daily Il Messaggero as he left the Holy See press office on July the 3rd. Fernández's comments are the clearest indication to date since Pope Leo's election of a likely continuation of Pope Francis's gay blessing declaration, which you all remember came from Fiducia Supplicans, which was an apostolic exhortation that came out on, I think, like December the 18th, 2023, which was, to be honest with you, one of the worst timed papal exhortations. What it had to say was confusing at best. When it came out was just so pastorally insensitive. Notice, however, in this story, Pope Leo says nothing. This is, however, just simply a response to a journalist's question of Fernández's, his comments. Anyway, however, the impromptu interview falls short of an explicit official statement from the Vatican. So thank you, NCR Online, for at least giving context to this comment, because without context, the headlines will throw people in a tizzy. which is exactly what this show does not want to do. It wants to calm people down and let people know that the church will continue to exist whether you agree with the pontiff or not, because this particular topic did not change doctrine, did not create dogma, but helped to direct pastoral care for people who are in a same-sex relationship, not an approval of the relationship, but a special blessing or at least a grace given to those individuals. Anyway, let's continue. Under Francis, the Dicastery for the Doctrine of the Faith in December 2023 released a document entitled Fiducia Supplicans on the pastoral meaning of blessings, which opened the door to church blessing for couples in irregular situations, which include same-sex relationships. What's interesting is that this particular document focused specifically on gay marriages, which are invalid in the church's eyes. They're not only illicit, they are invalid. But this also applies to, say, a heterosexual couple who might be married civilly because one or the other person has not received an annulment from a previous marriage. So, as somebody comes to, say, communion, and their arms are folded as such, which is at least an American local small t tradition that says, I'm not receiving communion, can I get a blessing instead? They come up individually. You offer them a blessing. You don't know the reason why they're not receiving communion, but they, in their own mind, know well enough, I'm not worthy to receive the Eucharist sacramentally, but I can at least receive some sort of blessing from the church. In the same way, someone walks by me after Mass and they say, Father Leo, can you bless me? I don't exactly always know why, but I offer them a blessing. This is what Fiducia Supplicans tried to do, is to say that someone might be in an irregular marriage. Can I at least offer a blessing for the people in this irregular marriage? The technical answer is yes, you can. What has happened, sadly, was that headlines, lack of nuance, lack of pastoral experience, and perhaps even theological bias motivated by political inclinations turned this into a gay marriage debate. And we clearly know that Pope Francis had tremendous compassion for people who were in same-sex relationships or who struggled with same-sexual attractions. Anyway, the document signed by Fernández and his deputy, Monsignor Armando Mateo, and approved by Pope Francis, stressed that such blessings could not take the form of a liturgical rite and did not imply formal approval of irregular unions. In other words, Fiducia Supplicans didn't want to create a ceremony, didn't want to have people come into the church. It could be on the street. It could be like, hey, a gay couple comes up to say, hey, Father, can you give me a blessing? What am I supposed to do? Say, no, not at all. I would simply say, may God bless you. And if you go back to my video previously, you'll see that perhaps I would even pray in a certain way that they will love each other with the pure love that God has for them, that they will grow in holiness, that they will grow in chastity, that they will not use each other or see each other as objects, but rather see each other as a gift from God, and your gift to the other should be in a desire to help the other become a saint. That's what kind of like my prayer would have said. And so it would certainly not be a condoning of, but really tapping into the spiritual gift that God wants to give to me to share with the world, even if they don't deserve it. Because the fact is, all blessings are completely undeserved. It's just the reality. And that's what I think Pope Francis's heart and intention was about. But because middle management was part of the process of creating the document, it was portrayed as such. Pope approves gay blessings on gay marriages, which was not the case. Not the case at all. And I think sound-minded priests and theologians agree. But we would also agree, was it ill-timed? Yes. This is not something you drop a few days before Christmas, especially in very contentious times where the world is just going crazy about this particular topic. Secondly, the language could have been improved. But even CBS, one of the reporters asked Pope Francis, like, are you approving gay marriage? And he's like, no, not at all, because that would be invalid. So the phrasing of the document could have been improved. Anyway, the blessings document generated considerable conservative backlash. That's a little unfortunate because because the backlash wasn't about conservative or liberal. It was about clarity. So I find when people use these terms, there's already kind of like a political motivation for it. No, it generated considerable backlash, not from conservatives, but just because it was confusing and it came out at a terrible time. And some of the critics of the late Pope Francis had expressed hope that Pope Leo would rescind or ignore it. Okay, this is what we're trying to do now. We're trying to basically pit Pope Leo versus Pope Francis. And guess what? I do not think Pope Leo is going to take that bait. Not at all. I think he's clever. And not just because he has a great name, by the way. I think he's clever enough to know that there are some things he doesn't need to comment on. I think that this particular Pope, because he is an Augustinian, wants to create more of a sense of community, brotherhood, a real familial love for one another, to see each other as family. And I know Pope Francis had similar desires, but I think his culture and perhaps some of his middle management and maybe his style created more angst with people because we are in a more anxious world. I think Pope Leo has calmed a lot of people's hearts because he's just simply speaking on the basics of the Catholic faith rather than wading into off-the-cuff commentary, which is, again, something that Pope Francis was famous for. He would just say things and it would become an instant kind of worldwide viral sensation. Sometimes for good reasons, but also sometimes that created confusion to the point where Pope Francis even had to follow up with an explanation and even an apology. Again, I've never heard a Pope apologize. But when he made the comment about Catholics not having to be like rabbits constantly multiplying, he knew that he hurt families that had large number of children. And Pope Francis apologized. Whoa, how human of him as a pope. But in Pope Leo's case, I think his time in the Vatican, working in the congregation that kind of selected bishops, taught him that he needs to approach topics like this with a bit more diplomacy and to make sure that what he says is not well crafted, but at least will be articulated in the manner in which he intends. So, i.e., prepared comments as opposed to off-the-cuff commentary. Also, the Pope, Leo, I think he realizes that he doesn't have to enter into every conversation. He doesn't. He just doesn't need to. And so he let Fernández, his kind of person in charge of the Congregation for the Doctrine of Faith, where, he is, they now call it the Dicastery for the Doctrine of Faith, CDF, to keep it short. He let him do the talking. And it was simply a Q&A, a quick Q&A. But apparently from what he says, will remain, that in quotes is what will cause people a lot of consternation, because what remained from the previous pontificate was a lot of confusion, a lot of hurt, a lot of people cheering and gloating, and a lot of people misunderstanding what the Catholic Church actually teaches in being able to love all people, to reject the sin in an a way that doesn't reject the person who is committing the sin. And so we have to suggest that maybe Cardinal Fernández should have used other terms rather than will remain, because we don't want the confusion to remain. We don't want the division to remain. I think had I been part of Cardinal Fernández's press secretary, which clearly would never happen, it would have been something like, you know what? I know Pope Leo continues to honor Pope Francis and knows that his love and providing pastoral care will remain unchanged. As for his opinions on Fiducia Supplicans, he doesn't have to have an opinion because we have the Church's teachings. And the Church's teachings are marriage is the union of two people, man and woman. And to try to equate a gay marriage with a sacramental marriage in the Catholic Church would be literally comparing two diametrically opposed things. But will Pope Leo continue to love and provide pastoral care for people in all situations and in all types of marriages? The answer is yes. So that's at least where I can leave it with you. What are we to make of Pope Leo? Well, I personally like him a lot. And when I get the chance to go to Rome, God willing, I will attend his audience and I will hopefully feel that joy and connection that I felt with Pope Benedict, that I felt with Saint Pope John Paul II, which I didn't necessarily feel for Pope Francis. Not for any negative reasons, I just didn't feel that. But guess what? Feelings, faith, and facts are three different things. We need to be able to set them aside, because a headline like this, "Gay blessings will remain under Pope Leo," Vatican Doctrine Chief says, is simply just to get our feelings up and running, just so that you can read the article. But guess what? I did it for you. And more importantly, kind of unpacked what I thought will hopefully be helpful so that you don't start seeing Pope Francis versus Pope Leo, because that's not going to happen. It's not the Augustinian way of Pope Leo's religious community, but it's really to develop, above all, a love for God, and to know that our hearts are always going to be restless. This is St. Augustine, until it rests in God. And so I think whenever you get headlines like this, take it to prayer. Number one, do not overreact. In fact, if you have questions, maybe you can even just ask me, because I'll be doing more of that on Patreon. Me and my team had a great meeting, and we're going to try to do more to interact with our Patreon community, because without your support, we cannot dish out faith, culture, and commentary. So smash the like button, subscribe, please subscribe. It helps us out. Offer your comments and go to patreon.com/The Father Leo Show, where hopefully I'm creating in you a deeper hunger for God. God bless you.